Hi, Garland Nixon here, and this this term fascism is always thrown around. We've got to save America because Trump will bring in fascism. Biden's a fascist. Everybody's a fascist, and nobody's a fascist. Let's talk. Hi, Garland Nixon here on a Sunday afternoon, and I was just thinking about the issue of fascism, right? It's a term that is thrown around, and to many people, to a lot of people, I've noticed. Here's what it means. It's like some people use the word communism, fascism, whatever, and they say that's communism, that's fascism, and to a lot of people, sadly and unfortunately, what those terms mean are something that I don't like, somebody that I don't like, something that's scary, something I don't understand, something that's bad, something that's evil, etc., etc. And the truth is, the matter is this, particularly in America, I find that about 99.999% of the people that call people communists have no idea what communism is. And the same goes for fascism. The only thing they know is, let's see, the Nazis. So everybody I don't like is a Nazi, right? And not even understanding this. If you use the word democracy, what does that mean? Are there more than one types of democracy? Is there a republic? Is there a bottom-up democracy? Is there a parliamentary system? Oh, no, there's different types of democracies, right? There's the illusion of democracy as opposed to actually the practice of democracy, right? Then, if we talk about socialism, communism, what does it really mean? Most people that say that have no idea, like call other people these terms in a pejorative manner, in a negative manner, don't even know what they mean. It's something I don't like. Joe Biden's a communist. He's far left and far right. You know, the thing I recall, and that was Wikipedia at one time referred to the gray zone as a far left and a far right website at the same time. It is both. It's far left and far right, which goes to show something. What were they saying from their perspective if it was far left and far right? What they were really saying is this: we consider our brand of thought the mainstream thought, right? This is to us, to those people who are writing that, right? Our brand of thought, the way we see the world, is the acceptable way to see the world. Anyone who sees the world different or argues for a different ideological position, right, is an extremist. What difference does it make if you call them far left or far right? They're an extremist because they are not aligned with our method of seeing the world, our way of explaining things. So Max Blumenthal, you can call him far right, you can call him far left. It doesn't mean anything except I hate him. There are people, you're a communist, this guy's a communist, Joe Biden's a communist, right? And clearly, if you think Joe Biden's a communist, you have no understanding what communism is or socialism is, right? And most people, that you've got the people, the Biden supporting people, we can't let Trump in. Why? Because he's going to bring in Nazism. He's going to bring in National Socialism. He's going to bring in fascism. Let's talk about it a little bit. A few of the things. I think I got a book here that I would recommend to people, right? Not saying it's perfect, but it's a pretty good book because it is an academic book, and it's called Fascism and the Far Right, right? And it's by Peter Davies and Derek Lynch. And it's the Routledge companion to Fascism and the Far Right. This is a good book because one of the things that it does is you don't have to start at the beginning of it. You can go anywhere and it'll give you examples. It'll give you historical context. And the thing I like about it is this: you can kind of pull things out of it here and there and make a decision on your own as to what you think it is, your interpretation of far right. I'll put it like this, of fascism. Most of the things that I find in our society, people that call other people fascism, it's simply self-serving. If you're a conservative, then the people that disagree with you, well, those lefties are a bunch of fascists. If you're a lefty person, then those right wingers are clearly fascists, right? Most of the time, it's just a self-serving argument that means people that I don't agree with or disagree with me strongly in a lot of areas are fascists. Let's talk about a couple of things that I think are fundamental to fascism. One of them is a commitment to war. Now, based on that, look at the Biden administration right now. Could there be a greater commitment to war than the Biden administration right now? Okay, what's going on? They deliberately started a war in Ukraine. Deliberately started. The government was overthrown by Biden and the very people that are in an office with him, right? And they, immediately upon overthrowing the government, they began to prepare Ukraine for a war with its gigantic neighbor in some dream world where Ukraine could defeat a country 28 times bigger than itself, right? This is, so we're going to prepare you to fight your neighbor. Your neighbor is 28 times your size. You know, I can say that for a number of reasons, not the least of which being resources alone. It wasn't a good situation for Ukraine, but the war wasn't designed for Ukraine. Right, Ukraine was the cannon fodder. Ukraine was to be sacrificed at the altar of the neoconservative ideology, which I'm going to continue to argue is a fascist ideology. Right, that commitment to war. There's when people who even talk about socialism, communism, etc., don't understand it. You know, the Lenin versus Trotsky. Right, the Trotskyites, as people call them, the people who believe in a permanent war state. People that believe the Straussians, you call them the Straussians, Leonard Strauss from Chicago, etc. These are people who had their, what's the word I'm going to look for? Their beginnings, their foundations initially in a semi-socialist ideological environment that kind of branched out into madness, and it became, we've got to permanently control the world and rule the world, and it's just pure fascism. It eventually developed into fascism. That's the other thing that people don't understand. An ideology, a group of people, a group way of seeing the world can develop. It can start one way and it can divide. And so now what do you have? You have a Bolivarian socialism in Venezuela, which has no commitment to war whatsoever, which is committed to basically a socialism that says, you know, give people free houses and free food and stuff like that, as opposed to the Straussians, who are basically simply, you know, a form of turning into a form of an ethno-fascism, right? So what you have is you have a bunch of people who basically see the world as something to be conquered. They see two types of countries. They see, number one, countries that they've conquered. How can you tell they've conquered countries? Look at Germany. How can you tell they've conquered Germany? It's full of bases. When you conquer a country, if you're a fascist, if you're whatever you want, term you want to use, you're going to conquer a country, you're going to fill it with bases. That way you've got it under control. You've got your military people walking around. There's nothing they can do. Korea loaded with bases, Philippines loaded with US bases, Japan loaded with US bases. If you want to see the countries that are the most controlled by the US empire, count the bases. The ones with the most bases, is that's what you're going to see, because bases are bases of occupation. They will claim they're bases of assistance and protection, but they're not. They're occupation. Okay, so Germany, you look at Germany, absolutely no independence and sovereignty whatsoever. Germany is being destroyed, but their bases of occupation, they're occupied. The people who are the people in supposedly the leaders of Germany understand that, and they're acting on behalf of their occupiers, right? So fascism has a commitment to war. That's it. A commitment to war. So therefore, when you occupy countries, right, like a Rome, you occupy a Germany, you occupy a Philippines, you occupy these countries. Those occupations are A, to control the country, and B, to use as imperial outposts for furthering your war interests, for advancing your war. Here's the example right now. What is the U.S. doing in Korea? They're setting Korea up to be the next Ukraine. Hey, South Korea, we're going to load you up with bases, and we're going to set you to fight North Korea, to fight China, to fight whoever. We're going to use you as cannon fodder. Philippines, loading you up with bases to fight China. Japan, loading you up with bases to fight China, right? What is it? These countries have been conquered, And now they are to be, their populations, etc., are to be sacrificed. And the ruling elite in those countries, unless something happens that they're overthrown or whatever, the ruling elite is just going to act on behalf of the fascist occupying power. So that commitment to war is inextricably linked to the occupations of the conquered nations. So there are countries that are being conquered, the countries that have yet to be conquered, because that's the only kind of countries there are to the fascist occupation, to the fascist expansionist war-making country. The countries that have been conquered are then utilized to expand your empire and to attack the countries that haven't been conquered. All you have to do is look at who are the enemies of the United States. China, they got an independent foreign policy. Russia, independent foreign policy. All over South America, they want independence. Africa wants independence. So we've got bases all over Africa. They have natural resources and they desire independence. Those two things must be stopped. Right. So the U.S. is utilizing its expansive bases to reach out and touch the countries that it wants to conquer. So it's going after these countries, and these countries, the bottom line is these countries are now saying it's so blatantly obvious what you're doing that we're going to band together. We have no choice but to band together to defend ourselves. And a commitment to war, well, that's obvious right now. The U.S. has destabilized North Korea, destabilized the entire Pacific region in their confronting, deterring China, right? They destabilized Europe, and they're impoverishing the Europeans in their move to destabilize and deter Russia, right? And of course, they've got wars going like crazy in the Middle East, heating up, getting hotter and hotter and hotter. I would argue that the resistance forces there are controlling the speed of the escalation. But bottom line is this: they're on the brink of war in China, in Asia, in Korea, in Russia, in the Middle East. They're either involved in wars or on the brink of wars, which means what? Which means the commitment to war of the United States, of its ruling elite, has never been greater. Has never been greater. So the idea that Trump is a fascist would mean that Trump would have to be an integral part of this commitment to war. Not that Trump isn't part of the commitment to war, but I would argue that Donald Trump is far less committed to war as an ideological expression than the current fascists in power, right? He is, we'll talk about Trump, because the commitment to war right now is part of the ideological expression of the Biden administration and of how they see America, right? It is here's a perfect example. I had a professor once that said, how do you spell commitment? How do you spell commitment? M-O-N-E-Y. You want to know where somebody's committed? See where their money is. Anybody ever have in life a girlfriend that says, I'm broke, I have no money. Oh my God, look at those shoes. Here's my credit card. Or any woman out there ever have a husband or a boyfriend that says, dude, I mean, it says, hey, babe, I'm broke. I can't afford this or that. Oh, look at that fishing rod. Hey, where's my credit card, right? The bottom line is this: they will show you where they're committed. They can't afford this, that, or that, but all of a sudden there's a new fishing rod. Guilty. All of a sudden there's a new fishing rod. They'll do whatever they got to do to get that fishing rod. All that's demonstrating it's not about men or women. Or the other 37 genders I think we got in this country. But it's about, in reality, it is about people showing you where they're committed to. Right now, let's go on. Where's your commitment? Right? How do you spell commitment? M-O-N-E-Y. Right now, one of the issues in America, one of the political problems that the ruling elite has is that the people are starting to ask questions, right? The person's asking questions. Here's the questions. The wife says to the husband, hey, the kids need money for school. We need food. The plaster's falling off of this room. We got to fix this room. And you're spending all of our money up on fishing. New fishing rod. You just bought a $500 fishing rod. You just put a new engine on the back of your boat that costs $10,000. You did, and our house is falling apart, and the kids need clothes and blah blah blah. Right? And it is now what has happened is there is a contradiction. Right? There is the commitment of this guy to his fishing and fun and what he wants, but there is the accountability and responsibility that he's got a family and that they need things. And now you have a contradiction. And now the wife and the kids are looking at him like this. Dad, right? The wife's looking at him like this. You better get your act together. Sonny boy, right? Everybody's angry at him because they see a glaring contradiction. His commitment does not align with the needs of the family, right? Or it could happen with a woman, whoever. You get the point, right? Okay, that's what the fascists in America are having. The problem is their commitment. What do they say? We got to build a new $500 billion B-1B bomber. We've got to upgrade our nuclear deterrent. That's going to cost $1 trillion. We've got to build bases right now. Finland, right? Okay, we got Finland now. We're building bases all over Finland. That costs money. We're building bases in Philippines. That costs money. And American people are starting to say, wait a minute, man, I'm seeing homeless people all over the damn place, and our infrastructure, we're getting brownouts, blackouts, blueouts, every kind of problems with the electrical grid. You know, all of these things are becoming apparent. Plaster is falling off the ceiling, and the kids need money for school clothes. That's what America is saying to the ruling elite. And the ruling elite is saying our commitment is to these fishing rods. Our commitment is to war. And so you have now a disconnect. The people want something and their government says, screw you, right? So now the people of America are not all that thrilled with a expansionist war-making fascism, and the people who run the ruling elite, two things. Number one, the plaster ain't falling off of their walls. Their kids ain't worried about an education, right? So part of the disconnect is that the ruling elites living pretty damn good. So they don't have to worry about the things that we have to worry about. They have to worry about education and healthcare, or do they have a retirement plan? They don't have to worry about those things. They don't need a retirement plan. They're rich and getting richer, right? So what you're looking at is this disconnect between the American people and the fascist, expansionist, war-making ideology of the ruling elite starting to come to a head. So fascism, is Biden a fascist? Is Trump a fascist? Is Garland a fascist? Is socialism fascist? Blah, blah, blah. Is this or that? Is where you're trying to define you, so whoever's not aligned with you to call them a fascist? Bottom line is this. Fascism is here. Fascism is in America. There is a commitment to war and only war. Now, let me add something else. So it's clear there's a commitment to war, expansionism, and aggressive militarism. And all of our money is spent on that. How do you spell commitment? I mean, you know, M-O-N-E-Y, where's our commitment? Now, let's move on to another pillar, I think, of fascism. That would be a need to have authoritative control over the people, right? The thoughts, the beliefs, the discussions, everything, right? Because fascism is very brittle. It can't stand examination. You know, right now, I mean, so I'm doing my radio show Friday, my Pacifica radio show, WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C., right? So I'm doing this show, and I'm talking about some things that the members of Congress are doing. And I was thinking today, I thought I should call some members of Congress and say, look, I've been ragging on you guys on, I know you know it. Come on, it's a 50,000 watt FM station in Washington, D.C. And I remember years ago when there were people from staffers from the Hill and a particular congressman member that I knew very well that listened to WPFW all the time, right? It's a powerful station in Washington, D.C. A lot of people listen to it. So I suspect that the members of Congress know that some lunatic named Garland Nixon is raking them over the coals every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m., okay? So I thought, you know, probably a good idea for me to call over there and say, look, guys, I'm giving you guys what for, why not do it again? Why don't you send somebody over here and defend yourselves? And I realized something, because they can't. They can't. Because what I'm saying is true. Let me give you an example. One of the things that I said is I went after the Congressional Black Caucus, and I said, wait a minute, the Congressional Black Caucus, you're here to stop racism, discrimination, all that crap you claim, right? But they pushed through this bill called the Countering Malign Influence in Russia Act. And what is that? It basically says that if a African country wants to cut a deal with Russia, some kind of a business deal, whatever deal, that the United States will look at it, and if the U.S. doesn't like it, then they'll go after this country, sanction them, et cetera. And I said, well, wait a minute. You're supposed to be the Congressional Black Caucus. You're supposed to be fighting discrimination and racism and standing up for independence, democracy, and sovereignty. Does it make sense if you're standing up for the black man or whatever the hell that you're going to say a country that's mostly white can say to a country that's mostly black, you can't do this or we'll go after you. You can't have the independence and sovereignty to make a deal with Russia if you choose. I said, that sounds racist to me. And you're the Congressional Black Caucus, right? And so, well, how the hell can you claim to be standing up against racism and discrimination and all the crap that you claim when in fact your deeds are the opposite? Right? So I thought I should call over to the CBC, Congressional Black Caucus, and say, hey, come on, send somebody over, get somebody on the phone. We need to have this discussion. But you know what? Here's what I know. They ain't going to do it because they can't. There's no defense for that. What are they going to say? What possible defense? You know what it would be like? It would be like now when they asked Tony Blinken about the massacre in Gaza. Hey, they're massacring civilians in Gaza. And Blinken says, yeah, we're trying to think about doing something. And we're saying to the Israelis, don't do it. And it's not happening. What? Massacre in Gaza? Silly man. You know what I mean? They have nothing to say. There is no answer to that. It's so glaringly obvious that what they're doing is wrong. And I realized they won't answer the phone if I call over. I used to get members of Congress on my show, but they can't come on. They can't talk to the people that they ostensibly represent because they don't represent them. So what do they have to do? What happens? You have to shut Garland's mouth. Why is it Garland's not on Twitter right now? According to Twitter, it's because Garland has had a Twitter account since 2009 with the same exact Twitter handle, the same exact Twitter password. Nothing's changed. And then one day they said, we don't know who can't. Garland's paid for them for a year ahead of time because they charge you for a check mark to verify it. I paid them a year ahead of time. And they said, oh man, we don't know who you are. We can't figure out if you own this account. Sorry, it's closed. 120,000 followers, right? So the bottom line is this. One can argue that it has to be one of two things. Either they really are that incompetent and unable to do that and unable to figure out who I am. It's possible because of liars and cheaters and frauds. Maybe they can't. One could make an alternative argument that they know exactly who the hell I am and that it's just censorship. Those are various arguments. Those are two arguments you could make. But the bottom line is this. People like Garland who attack the system, who go after the system, who expose the system, cannot be allowed to run their mouth. Another of the hallmarks of fascism is a need to control the conversation and narrative, a need to oppress those who question the narrative, who question the system. Why? Because the system is brittle, because the narrative is poorly constructed by idiots. And they cannot, and the narrative is so brittle and so poorly constructed that it can't stand to be exposed and discussed, right? Because it's disgusting. It can't pose to be discussed. Could Tony Blinken have an intellectual conversation with Garland Nixon about Gaza? No, he couldn't. Could he have an intellectual conversation with anyone, a philosophical conversation about good and bad, right and wrong, about consistency? How about the rules-based international order and the inconsistency and contradictions that say the United States can do this, 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 and this. If the other country does it, they're evil, fascist, expansionist, blah, 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 right? No, they can't have that discussion. And in a fascist country, because it's aggressive, because it's inconsistent, because it's self-serving, with its narratives, and its narratives are often absurd, there is a critical need to control the conversation and to suppress the dissident voice. Could it be any stronger here? Look what happened during COVID. During COVID, a time when there were people who were concerned about a health crisis, trying to figure out just how bad it was, what was the best course of action, right? And whether or not they believed that their governments were taking the best course of action, which is a very healthy thing for a society to do, to have that discussion. If it is a democracy or a republic or whatever, the healthiest thing is a robust discussion. The system then said, oh, no, We can't have that. We're going to put forth narratives, and anyone who opposes the narrative, we will shut their voice down. We'll throw them off Twitter, YouTube, Google, whatever we can. We'll shut their voice. Why? Because we can't afford to have a discussion with them because our points are weak and easily disputed. And that's another of the hallmarks of fascism. People can't have the kind of conversation they want. Everybody's heard of Hermann Goering and about the strict control of media in fascist Nazi Germany. I do recall who was it? I can't remember who had this conversation, but basically what they were saying was Joe Kennedy was the ambassador to Germany, and it was like during the 1930s, whatever. And someone else who worked for the New York Times, I think the Berlin Bureau, and they were in Germany and they left. And when they came back, they couldn't believe what they saw. The entire German population had been convinced that Poland was a gigantic threat. Poland didn't have much of a military. They were still pulling their cannons with horses. You know what I mean? They didn't have a lot of money. It was a poor country. They didn't have a lot of power. Although when they were attacked by Germany, they fought valiantly. They held up for a little while. But bottom line was the German population had been convinced that Poland was a threat, and they were almost standing on the edge of their seat saying, when are we going to eliminate this threat? Why? This had been created through lies, through fascist lies, through propaganda. They convinced the people that a lesser power was a threat to them. United States. I had somebody say something to me, yeah, we got to watch that North Korea because they'll do it. The absurd idea that a country the size of Pennsylvania, that a country with 40 million people is somehow a threat to the United States. It's preposterous. It is preposterous. Number one. Number two, North Korea is an independent country. They should be able to develop however they feel fit to develop. But the United States, being a fascist country, says we have a right to determine the future and the present of North Korea and to utilize violence to shape that future for North Korea. And in order to do that, if people like Garland keep saying to the American people, it's preposterous to think that North Korea is a threat to you, that's going to poke holes in our argument. So we got to shut Garland's mouth. China is they want to expand and do all kind of terrible things. Historically, show me the historical context for that. Show me China, who have they attacked and overthrown in the last 20, 40, 50 years? They have their wars, the last couple hundred. Show me China's aggressiveness and assertiveness. As I look at what was China? They were called the sick man of Asia, right? What did they do? They got attacked by the Japanese, you know what I mean? China has been the victim of colonialism, the victim of fascism, the victim of attacks. And now the United States, through propaganda, has American people believing that somehow China is a threat to them. Here's what's even worse. Again, fascism is an arrogance, right? That the United States has a right to tell China how to live their lives. If you look at poll after poll, polls say over 90% of the people in China support their government and feel happy about their government. And what did the United States run around? Oh, the Chinese don't have any rights. They need more rights. Well, if the 90% of the people support the government, they got all the rights they want and they're happy with. It's none of our damn business. But how can the ruling elite coax the foolish American people, the susceptible schmucks, into a potential nuclear war that is absolutely not in the interest of the people, absolutely runs against the interest of the people? How in the hell can they convince you, hey, we need to fight China and China's a threat, unless they lie to you and give you propaganda 24 hours a day against China? China's trying to make money. Look at Russia. What does Russia want? Russia wants to do business with Europe. Russia doesn't want to attack Europe. Show me. Let's see. I remember the Crimean War. Did Russia attack anybody? I can go war after war where Russia was attacked from a historical context. Let's look at China. Let's look at Russia, and let's see who did the attacking. Was it Europe? Was it in their allies? Or was it Russia and China? It's the opposite. So now what they want to tell us is the people that have been attacked by the U.S. empire and its imperial allies repeatedly for centuries now want to attack the U.S. empire and its colonial allies. So therefore, we must attack them again. We've attacked them over and over and over, and now they want to attack us. We got to attack them again. Have they attacked us? Nah. But they want to this time. And there's the American people. Yeah, China, they're doing evil things and they don't have any rights. Let me say this. It's their damn business how many rights they got. It ain't yours. It ain't yours. Don't come over to my house telling me how to raise my kids. Hey, Garland, I have kids, but I'm just saying, one daughter is grown. But I'm just saying, for the sake of argument, let's say I'm here and I got 3.5 kids in a minivan and my kid's out there cutting grass on a hot day. Next door neighbor. Yeah, Garland, it's 85 today. Man, I see you got your son out there cutting grass in the backyard. Yeah. It's too hot for that kid to cut grass. That's abuse. Get the hell off my property. Mind my business. Mind your damn business. Well, I think that your son, we've got a problem, me and some other neighbors. You're not raising your son correctly. He needs more rights. I think he should go in the house and drink iced tea. Let me tell you something. My dad was a longshoreman. I don't know how much you know about that job, but it's tough as hell. And the guys that come out of it ain't soft. And my dad didn't come out to me and say, hey, Garland, it's a little too hot to cut the grass. It's a little too cold. Oh, hell no. Get your ass out there and cut the grass. That was it. No questions. No. Would you like to cut the grass? No, I'm sorry. And I thank him for it today because it made me tough. And I say to the guy, my son's out there cutting the grass in the heat. You do what he got to do. He might have to work in the heat one day. He might have to work in the cold. He might have to do whatever he's got to do, and he needs to be man enough to damn do it. I don't want to hear your crap. Get off my property. It's none of your business. Don't come over here telling me how to raise my kids again. I'm going to kick your ass right off my porch. Adios. Right? That's what people have to say, and that's what China needs to really say to the U.S. All these idiots standing, no, China doesn't have any rights. They need more. Did they ask you how many rights they need? Did they come over here? Hey, we're the Chinese. We think America needs to fix that pothole in front of Joe Schmuck's house. Do you ever see China do it? No, it's your damn potholes. If America wants to fix them, fix them. If they don't, don't. But we live in a country that's fallen the hell apart, run by a government that could give a crap if we drop dead tomorrow, running us into an economic disaster. And you got these idiots running around this country saying, we've got to talk about China's rights and what they should do. It's none of our damn business. That's all I'm saying. It's none of our damn business. But that's part of the commitment, the way our government censors, controls the conversation to the point where they've got people that they are oppressing. Our government is oppressing and censoring its own people. And meanwhile, convincing them that they, instead of saying to our ruling elite, what the hell are you doing? You're screwing us. No. Don't come to us and talk about how bad we're screwing you. Go over to China and Russia and Iran. Hey, why do those people have to wear hijabs? And who's this guy, Alexei Navalny? Oh, the poor guy. Russia, you're not treating him right. None of our damn business. But that commitment to fascism is controlling the narrative. If they can't get you to talk about Russia and Tehran and Iran and Cuba, you're going to stop and you're going to look at your own situation and you're going to say something's rotten in Denmark. What's here with the ruling elites? Now, well, this person here said, what constitution? Let me say this. This is critical. People talk about the Constitution. Our government has no commitment to the Constitution whatsoever. Let me give you a couple examples. I was where was it? I was reading yesterday. RFK Jr. Right? RFK Jr. So recently they asked him about the government wiretapping Martin Luther King. And what did you think that was wrong? And what does he say? He said, well, we had to do that. Why? Because the government at the time thought that some member of his inner circles were communists. Well, wait a minute. Let's go back to the Constitution. If I'm not mistaken, aren't political views protected by the First Amendment? So the government said, you're a communist. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Constitution says if you want to be a libertarian, the government can't take any action and say you can't be a libertarian. If you want to be a socialist, a communist, it's protected under the First Amendment. It's a protected political view. You can go out and scream at everybody in the world, I want to be a communist and you should too. Hey, I got my YouTube channel, the Communist channel. It is protected. The Libertarian channel, it's protected. The Conservative channel, the Liberal channel, the whatever the hell channel you want, you can do it. But that is so in conversation. That is so in theory, but it's not so in real life. In real life, our government does not believe in the Constitution, does not enforce the Constitution, don't give a damn about the Constitution. The Constitution is something that for us to read and for us to discuss as though it was real, right? I guess you could argue it's an idea. It's an ideal, right? You could say the Constitution is something that the people out here say, I eventually want to get there, but we ain't nowhere near there. And as opposed to what people believe, Americans think we're already there. And so we have to protect what we have. We ain't got it. If you truly believed in the Constitution, you would say, RFK Jr., did you say they were wiretapping them because they thought they were communists? Yeah, that's a violation of the Constitution. They have every right to be communists. What next? We're going to wiretap these people. Why? Because we think they may be libertarians. Don't think that ain't coming. Don't think that ain't happening. So when you say, I want them to violate the Constitution to go after communists, you're also saying, I don't give a shit about the Constitution. They can violate it to go after any ideology they choose, just not mine. Go after another ideology. If you believe in the Constitution, you have to stand for the fundamental pillars of the Constitution, protections of political views. The fact of the matter is, when you have RFK Jr. saying, look, sure, they wiretapped Martin Luther King. It was a violation of the Constitution. They thought that a member of his or members of his inner circle were involved in political activities that are protected under the Constitution, but the government doesn't like those. So therefore, the government does not adhere to the Constitution when it comes to people who are communists or socialists. Well, you can get rid of the second part, because if the government doesn't adhere to the Constitution, the government doesn't adhere to the Constitution. And now people are finding that out for themselves. As an example, the Twitter files. What happened in the Twitter files? We now find out that our government was in violation, clear and blatant violation of the First Amendment, going to social media platforms saying, look, people are saying things that are clearly protected by the First Amendment, but we don't like them. We want you to take them off. We want you to take action against these people. We want you to throw them off. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? They did that because they knew they couldn't do it. So they knew if we go to the platform and have the company to do it, then we have the cover, and the cover is it's a private organization. So a private corporation can do it, but the government can't. However, from a legal perspective, if the government can't do it, the government can't come to someone else to act as an agent. As an example, this has to do with the laws of evidence, right? A police officer cannot climb over your fence, walk up to your house, put his face against the window and look in, and there he sees something illegal, right? He sees contraband. He sees, I get that, for the sake of this argument, cocaine, right? What he believes to be cocaine. So the cop, who has no warrant, walks across your yard, opens the fence, walks in, walks up to your house, sticks his face against the window, and he sees a white powder. He believes it could be cocaine, and then he arrests you and takes you away or whatever, right? Or even gets a warrant. He can't do that. He can't even go get a warrant. Why? Because that's not part of what's called exigent circumstances, which would be a warrantless search. That's exigent circumstances are warrant. When can a police officer do a search without a warrant, right? Now, if you happen to walk into that house and you see whatever that contraband is, the white powder, and then you walk out and you walk up to a cop and you say, look, I saw contraband, a white powder per se, body, doesn't matter what it was. You walk up to that cop outside and you say, I just was in there and there's a body laying on the floor. There's white powder or there's whatever it is, right? The cop can then act on that because he didn't need a warrant. He had information from someone who had a right to be there, who wasn't restricted by the Constitution from going on that property. Now, right? Okay. So the cop doesn't need a warrant. Somebody else went. But what a cop can't do, and this is critical, and this is why it's important to understand the Twitter files and where the true violation is. The cop can't have you act as an agent to get around a constitutional restriction. So the cop can't walk up to you and say, Garland, what? I think that there's a body or whatever, contraband, there's something illegal in that house. But I'm restricted by the Constitution. I can't just go over there and stare in the window. I can't go break in the door. I can't do it myself. I'd like you to do it. You then go over, break the window, look in, see the contraband, go back to the cop and say, hey, cop, yeah, it's in there. And then the cop goes and gets the warrant, arrests everybody, blah, blah, blah. He can't, because that you acted as an agent for them, right? They did an end around the Constitution. So it's the same as them doing it. They can't have you do something to violate their Constitution. They can't get around the Constitution by saying, I have these restrictions, so I'll just have somebody act as an agent. They'll go do there, then I can get the warrant or whatever I want, or I don't need a warrant. Then it's exigent circumstances, right? I don't need a warrant. Here's my point, if you think about that. That's exactly what the government did with Twitter. They said, look, we can't throw Joe Blow off. We can't have people censored on Twitter. We can't say we don't like what people are saying. We don't know, either it's not illegal, even though oftentimes it's true. It's a reasonable question. They're just literally at times people are just sharing articles that they found in the Washington Post. Literally, people got censored on Twitter for sharing articles that they found like in mainstream media. So I got censored on Facebook for sharing an NBC News article. NBC News still had the article up, but I shared it on Facebook, the article from NBC News, and I was censored for it and thrown off for like, I don't know, months of Facebook, right? But the government, meanwhile, can do it in around the Constitution. And that's all they did. We can't censor Joe Schmo. Hello, Twitter. Yeah, we want Joe Schmo thrown off. Okay, we got it. So now what did the argument do? What the government do? They use Twitter as an agent to violate the Constitution in a way that they couldn't do, but that the other person could. It's no different than the police officer saying, I can't go search that house. Hey, you're not a cop. You're not restricted by the Constitution. You go search the house. Clear violation of the law. Clear violation of the Constitution, which means the government has no respect for the Constitution. The government sees the Constitution as a hindrance to it. And a hindrance, it's a block in their ability to control the conversation of dissident voices, control the conversation and narrative. To me, in my opinion, that's another one of the pillars of fascism. One of the pillars of fascism is a lack of respect for the safeguards, for the guardrails that keep the government from being able to control everything. And you go internally, you go externally. The US government says you can't, it says to the Chinese, you are committing genocide against the Uyghurs and you must be held responsible. We got to sanction you. Where's your evidence? When you look at that, there's no evidence. There's more Uyghurs than they were before. That ain't much of a genocide. The first genocide in history where the population increases. How the hell is that a genocide? The Uyghurs, hey, are they genociding you? No. Oh, okay. The Muslim community and Muslim nations sent a delegation of Muslim leaders in. They looked around and they said, we don't see any genocide or anything like that. No luck. Sorry, we're out. Things seem fine here. There's no evidence of a genocide, but the U.S. empire has to lie. It can't have an intellectual conversation. You see, if the U.S. empire thought that there was a genocide going on in China with the Uyghurs, what would be the proper thing to do? To go to the UN. Do what South Africa did. What's wrong with that? We're going to go to the UN. We're going to make our plea to the UN. Here's all the evidence we have. Now, even if you don't agree with, believe in the UN, still go through the motions. You go there, you make your plea, you put forth your evidence, and the whole world looks at South Africa's evidence and says you got some pretty strong evidence. Do it with China. The problem is they got no evidence because they don't care, because this is not about evidence. It is about smiting your enemies, making up lies and propaganda, first and foremost, to indoctrinate your citizens. Fascism is about controlling the minds, the thoughts of your citizens, and it's about controlling the right of dissidents to speak up against your citizens. So I believe that fascism is here in America because of the war that our government has on its own citizens. You see, the biggest fear of the ruling elite, and particularly in a fascist environment, is what? Political uprising. They ain't scared of the people out there. They're ready to go to war with them. They're ready to fight them. They're ready to demonize them. They're scared of you and me. They're scared of us. We're the ones who are going to say, hey, I think something's rotten in Denmark. And they don't, oh my God. Oh my God. Somebody says your constitution is too old and dated. We need a global security contract, apparently. But here's the bottom line. Before you can talk about the Constitution, the document, whatever in it, I agree. There's things about the Constitution that need to be changed and adjusted. But before you can have that, right, you got to have people that are willing to uphold it. The question to me is not the Constitution. Well, I'm not here to discuss what's in or not in the Constitution. I taught that. I understand. Soldiers cannot quarter in the house of a person. That's Third Amendment. Well, okay, fine. Right? But the issue is, even if you update the Constitution, you change the Constitution, you rewrite it and put everything in it perfectly, every comma, every semicolon, it is grammatically correct. Everything is in the Constitution that we're like, yeah, that'll work right there. That these bastards ain't going to do it anyway. Hey, here's a Constitution. Thanks. Now we got something else we can violate. Hey, look, the Constitution says we can't do this. Joe, what is that, Tony? Says we can't do this. Yeah, right. Hey, do me a favor. I want you to go kill a guy and arrest a guy and throw the guy off of Twitter who said that we need to do that. You see, the Constitution is worthless. Doesn't matter what's in it, how it's written, how appropriate it is, how modernized it is. If you got a bunch of fascists in charge, they don't play by the rules. See, the Constitution are rules, rules-based international order. Again, one of the pillars of fascism, in my opinion, is a refusal to accept guardrails and rules. That anybody can ever tell you what to do or what not to do. That anybody can say you can't go this far, you can go this far. The U.S. empire can do anything we want to. And see, what happened is this. The U.S. has been doing it all over the world. Vietnam, we'll go in there, we'll kill, we'll maim, we'll steal, we'll do it in all over South America, we'll murder, we'll massacre, we'll genocide, we'll steal all the stuff, we'll overthrow governments, we'll CIA is coups, insurrections, and assassinations, we'll do all of those, but we'll come home and we'll tell these schmucks at home that ain't what we're doing. We're going around the world, hey, join the U.S. Navy, a force for good. So we'll lie. The kids will all say the Constitution in class. People will all wave flags, America, we're the good guys. And then they'll go out and they'll do their filthy dirt around the world and they'll convince you that they're the good guys, right? A little bit down, a little bit. There we go. Well, guess what? As the system starts to unravel, right? And here's what I mean. As the people start to feel the pain of empire, right? The people who run the empire, the ruling elite, get more desperate, and they have to turn up the fascism. They have to crank up the fascism because, okay, think about it. People are like, during this, let's go back to the good old days. Let's make America great again. Let's go back to the time when we had steel mills and we had this and that. Yes, sir, we're going back. But think about this. If a guy is an alcoholic, and alcoholism is destroying his life, and now he's hit 50 years old, his health is shot, his family's left him, he's lost his job, his life is hell and misery, right? And he says, I want to go back to when I was 21 years old. Boy, I was feeling good then and having a good old time. And weren't you drinking? Yeah, that's when I started. So if you could go back to when you were 21 years old, would you drink? No, I'd drink more. I had a blast, man. It was fun, right? What good would it do to go back if he was doing the same thing that got him here? Right? Because if he went back and started over again, he was going to end up in the same place, because what he was doing, it wasn't time that got him there. It was his actions that got him to this destruction of life at the age of 50 years old. So he says, I'd like to go back and start over doing what I was doing before. He's going to get where he is now, right? So there are a lot of people who are saying, I want to go back to the 60s and 70s, back when we had steel mills and this and that. All was good. But if we were an empire that was going around the world, what we're doing in the 60s and 70s, were we overthrowing governments in Africa? Overthrowing governments in South America? Oppressing, literally doing all kinds of illegalities in the U.S. colonies. In 1974-75, did the United States overthrow Gough Whitlam? Look it up, Gough, Whitlam, Whitlam. Look up Gough Whitlam. The United States overthrew the government of Australia. And the prime minister was a guy named Gough Whitlam and replaced him in the 74-75. So the reality is that the things that the U.S. was doing in the 60s and 70s, though there was the appearance that the economy was good, it was only good because they were robbing and stealing the hell out of people and getting resources cheap all over the world, stealing their bananas, their coffee, their this and that, degrading, humiliating, overthrowing, killing Thomas Sankara, overthrowing Kwame Nkrumah, and then go to South America. All of these things they were doing there, terrible things all over the world. So the truth of the matter is, for those who believe that we could go back to those good old days in the 60s and 70s and we can get back there and everything will be fine, it is what the U.S. was doing in the background there that got us to where we are today, that created the whiplash wherein we so abused, mistreated, and robbed those countries in the so-called third world that they've had it with us. And now they want to ally with China and Russia and Iran or Turkey, whoever the hell they can, anyone but us. Any place is better than here because we abused and robbed them. And now the U.S. empire is starting to pay the price for that abuse, starting to pay the price for robbing and stealing all over the world. That's the fact of the matter. And the American people are feeling the heat because they can't get stuff cheap like they used to. They can't dominate the markets through oppression and overthrowing governments and things like that. So now that we can't dominate the world markets, people are catching up. We're up to our ears in debt. But be it the average person up to their ears in credit card debt, the average corporation up to its ears in corporate debt, or our government, $34 trillion in debt. We're in a bad way and they don't see a way out of it. And the U.S. is just like, I know what we'll do is we'll start a war. We'll knock the hell out of Russia and China and whoever won't go along with us. And then we'll force them to go along with us. And we'll get back to that point. We'll get back to the 60s and 70s. You see, in the same way that somebody saying, I want to go back to the 60s and 70s, back to the good old days when we ran every damn thing, and back when we had steel mills and people had jobs and all that, the government's saying the same thing. The fascist government is saying, I want to go back to those good old days. I want to go back to the days when we could overthrow any government we wanted in the world and nobody could tell us otherwise. When we could say your government can have this type of government. If you want a communist government, you're not allowed to. We'll go in and kill 1 million people, 2.5 million people in Vietnam to stop a communist government. And they still got the communist government and they still have it to this day. It was futility. But so the same guy who says, make America great again, or whatever the hell they was reindustrialized, let's go back to those good old days. The same person who says that is saying, in a way, the same thing as these fascist warmongers who are saying, I want to go back to the good old days when we ruled the seas, we ruled the land, we ruled the skies, and we could steal it all we want to, and nobody could stop us. And therefore, our economy was strong. Bad news. While you may be allied with them in a way, what the people actually really are saying when they say, I want to go back to those good old days is, I want a stable system. I want a system that's stable. And I don't want wealth. Wealth is focusing and concentrating money in the hands of a few. I want prosperity where everybody's got a shot, there's jobs and there's opportunities for everybody. People are saying, I want prosperity over wealth, but it comes out as I want to go back to the good old days. But it's really all they're saying is I want new days where things are right again. I want opportunity. I want my what's the word I'm looking for? Well, whatever the case may be, you get what I'm saying. I don't have to say it a million different ways. And so now we look at our government, and our government, the bottom line is it's becoming exposed as a fascist government because it's a panic. They're in a panic. And now what do we have? We got a bunch of sociopaths running the government who are panicking, who are trying to figure out how they can control everything. And part of the controlling everything is controlling you and me and shutting us down. In Germany now, which is nothing but a U.S. colony, what are they literally saying? There's a party called AFD. Well, I'm a lefty, so AFD, I don't align with AFD, but whatever. Here's the bottom line. If you don't give people a left-leaning populist alternative and all they got is a right-leaning populist alternative, they'll take the populist alternative, even if it's something that appears to be a populist alternative that isn't. They don't care. They're looking for a populist alternative. And the bottom line is the neoliberals, right? The I'll call them the ultra-liberal fascists, have created a dynamic where the AfD looks better to the German people than them. And what they're saying is, holy crap, people are actually looking at the AfD and the polls say they're rising and people are going to choose the AfD over us. What can we do about that? We must destroy the AfD. We must go after the people. We must stop the people from being able to choose whatever they want. That's the same with Trump. Over here, we've created a dynamic where we're so bad that it's clear Trump would win. That the American people are saying, we don't love Trump. He seems like an asshole, but you're worse. So the American people are likely to choose Trump, as I see it. They're most likely to choose Trump over these the Biden fascists. And the reality is this: the Biden fascists say to the American people, we cannot let you make that choice. We cannot give you that option. We got to charge Trump with a billion things. We got to go after him for anything we can. We have to use enemy lawfare. It doesn't matter. God only knows, I'll just say this, what they'll do to stop Trump, because they know Trump will win, which he will, and that he'll do some things they don't want. Now, Trump recently showed this. Trump has fascist tendencies. Absolutely. Authoritarian tendencies. Absolutely, he does. Recently, Trump said something like, yes, we're going to deport the Hamas supporters. Well, that's not a lot of respect for the Constitution there. Don't people have a right to say I support Hamas? And might I add, the other part of it is this. The definition of Hamas supporters is just like the definition of anti-vaxxers. You redefine something and then you attack under the new definition that you created. You attack that group. You can't attack them under the true definition, because there were people saying, I'm not opposed to vaccines, but I got some issues with the way this thing is being introduced and I need more information. That's all. There were people just saying, I don't trust you. I don't trust the people who are telling us to take it. That's all they were saying. There was a lot of people saying, I don't trust these people and I need more information. And there were people who were already got the vaccination, already got it. They were just asking for information and they were attacked and they were redefined as anti-vaxxers. Where beforehand, the term anti-vaxxer, which wasn't a real term, but it had a meaning. Right. And the meaning, even then, I think was hazy, because the meaning then were people who were questioning or opposed to mandatory vaccines. And I think even then there were people who wanted a more robust discussion about the mandatory vaccines, the history of things that have happened. And they wanted a robust a conversation in the public sphere, which I think we should have a robust conversation in the public sphere about anything. But they were called anti-vaxxers. There were people who were just opposed to vaccines. But I think a big part of that problem was because they would not have a robust discussion about mandatory vaccines, that caused even more suspicion, bottom line. And people had a right. And if you say, hey, you got to take this, and somebody says, can we have a robust discussion about this in the public sphere before I decide? No, how dare you, you horrible creature. You create an environment where people become even more suspicious, and they say, if you don't want to talk about it, something's rotten in Denmark, right? I'm not taking a position on any of that. I'm simply saying they redefined anti-vaxxer, and then they attacked anybody who wanted to have a robust discussion in the public sphere. Now, Trump, yes, we're going to deport all Hamas supporters. So let's start here. You had a protest with 400,000 people saying, holding up signs, I don't stop the genocide. There were people, and like Jewish Voices for Peace, some who strongly believed in Israel's right to exist and in Israel's, supported Israel's right to be there, and had some strand of Zionism in their ideology, but they didn't believe in killing innocent people. So you had Jewish people saying, hey, I've always thought Israel was cool, but come on now, you're killing innocent people. That needs to stop, right? I'm of a different way. I see the world a bit differently. I see Israel as an imperial military outpost for the U.S. empire. But bottom line, that's all that. Look, that's a discussion we can have, isn't it? I could sit down with someone and have an intellectual discussion about Israel's right to exist. Is Israel oppressive? Is it apartheid? Let's have that discussion. That's most of the time. That's all the hell we're asking for, right? So what happened? 400,000 Hamas supporters came together to Jewish Forces for Peace are now Hamas supporters. So what did they do? Just like the term anti-vaxxer, they redefined the term Hamas supporter to anyone who opposes the ongoing genocide in Israel. And now when Trump says we want to deport these Hamas supporters, all he's really saying is anyone who will not align with me, who's dissenting against the U.S. policy on Israel, which Trump and Biden are aligned with that. Anybody who does that, we need to throw them out of the country. Well, is that a fascist position? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So I can make the argument that when it comes to Trump, there are areas where Trump clearly exhibit that fascist tendencies. Absolutely, there. I'm not here to defend Trump and say he's good. Now, I would say this. There are people that say the lesser of two evils, and I always call it the evil of two lessers. If you're arguing, and that's why I write in, Hugo Chavez or the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. I've written him in, or whoever the hell I'm going to put in a name. I like Jesse Ventura, right? I've interviewed him a number of times. Great guy. So I've put in all kinds of names, right? For the hell of it. None of them are getting elected. But if a person, in my opinion, was saying, I got to do the lesser of two fascists, the lesser of two evil, the group that exhibits the least of the fascist tendencies, I'd probably have to argue that Trump exhibits less fascist tendencies than the Biden administration. And why is that? First and foremost, because he has a significantly less commitment to war, right? He doesn't have the same neocon ideology that they do. He has a much lower commitment to war. Now, don't get me wrong. Trump has a commitment to domination. He has a American exceptionalism. We're the greatest, we're the best. And because we're the strongest, we can do whatever the hell we want. As a perfect example, let me give you a perfect example of what is a fascist tendency that Trump has. One of the things that Trump had said when the U.S. started buying oil and backing off some of the sanctions on Venezuela, so Venezuela could sell its oil, right? And that was directly as a result of the issues with Russian oil. So Trump said, ha, 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 if it was me, Venezuela would have fallen. Of course, I'm not using his exact words, I'm paraphrasing, and we'd be getting that oil free, right? We wouldn't be paying for that oil. We'd be getting that oil. What is Trump saying? If I was still president, we'd have overthrown the government. Remember, he's the Juan Guaido. Trump is the Juan Guaido guy. He's the guy who brought in Juan Guaido and said, this is the president, right? He brought in Elliot Abrams, a pure fascist monster. I mean, he brought in fascist monsters all around him. Let's be honest about it, right? So he brings in this dog, Elliot Abrams, this frothing mouth madman, and he sends him down and he take out Venezuela. So what Trump said was, basically, we don't want a war with the big guys that have nukes. We'll go after the little guys, right? We're going to rob and steal the little guys. Well, that's still a fascist tendency. I'm going to take out Nicaragua. You got no right. I mean, I'm going to take out Venezuela. You have no right to take out Venezuela. That's a fascist perspective. I got a right to go around the world. Now, what Trump was saying is we don't have to use military. We'll use other means. We'll starve them to death, and we'll surround them. We'll do all these terrible things to them, and lots of them will die. Who cares? Because I'm a fascist bastard. And then when they die, we'll take all of their natural resources. Well, let's face it, Trump, you're pretty well aligned with these sons of bitches, pretty well aligned with them on foreign policy. But what Trump would say is, but I don't want to go to war with Russia and China because those sons of guns will nuke us. So he's saying, I still want to have a fascist ideology that goes around the world and steals other people's stuff, but I don't want a nuclear war, so let's not do that. And let's try to do it without a way of going to war. So if you had to argue, let's be honest, just from a technical perspective, if you had to argue that there was a lesser of two evils, you'd have to argue that Trump was the lesser of two evils. Because for all the evil that he would do, he wouldn't go into nuclear war more likely than not. I'm not saying he wouldn't, could happen, but he'd be less likely to drag us into a nuclear war with a peer power than these people would. That's all I'm going to say. I want to see something. Somebody said, get real. I want to see. Operation Warp Speed led to unimaginable scale of carnage across the U.S. Get real, Garland. You know this. I'm like, when did I say it didn't? When did I say Operation Warp Speed didn't do that? What? Get real. I know that. Where did I go on and say, oh no, good old Operation Warp Speed, love that? Absolutely not. So, like, when you listen to what I say, don't add something to it as though I said something or took a position that I did not take. I mean, I think we are in agreement with the whole Operation Warp Speed thing. Trump was all on board that stuff. That's why I said there are people that like Trump. I'm the last person that's going to come up and say Trump is your savior. When I say the lesser of two evils, when people say the lesser two evils, I say the evil of two lessers. Again, Trump almost got us into a war with North Korea. But remember, Trump tried to stop a war with North Korea. Then he almost got us into a war with Iran. Yeah, anybody here to say that Trump is somehow the second coming of FDR, good luck there, or Lincoln, that ain't the case. It's just that, here's my position. Trump has fascist elements. But if I had to say there were a lesser of two evils or evil of two lessers looking at the Biden administration, I would have to say that the Biden administration has a greater couple of things. Let's do some comparisons. I'm glad somebody brought that in, because one of the things I think it's important to do is some comparisons. Here's a comparison. If I had to compare the Biden administration, the Biden people to Trump, period, not forget the Trump administration, but to Trump's ideological proclivities, whatever, I'd have to say a couple of things. That they have a significantly greater dedication to war than Trump. An active, more dedication to war and to international confrontation than Trump. I think Trump's trying to do more business deals than them, right? He's still going to do international confrontation. He's still going to try to overthrow governments and all kinds of terrible fascist things. But I think the Biden administration has a greater dedication to those types of very dangerous confrontations than he does. So again, don't try to pretend like I did say that he didn't have a dedication to international confrontation. I said they've got a greater a dedication than he does. Trump has less of a dedication to internal censorship, right? He has less of a dedication to to shutting down discussion than they do. I would say that. Now, I think part of that may be because his ilk, people aligned with him, were in fact some of the greatest victims, the major victims of censorship as a result of the neoliberals or whatever you want to call them. So to some extent, he's pushing back against the people who tried to shut his mouth. Now, I'm not going to use that to argue that if Trump came to full power, that he wouldn't then try to censor people who are on the left who disagree with him, because he's made statements to show that he has absolutely no respect for the Constitution also. Yes, we've got to throw out of the country all of these Marxists. Well, if you want to be a Marxist, that's protected by the Constitution. So Trump has shown that he has absolutely he has as little respect for the Constitution as Biden. Look, this is the way things are in America. You don't respect the Constitution. You say, I don't agree with those people, and therefore they shouldn't be allowed to exercise their constitutional rights. To me, if the people you disagree with can't exercise their constitutional rights, then there ain't no constitutional rights. Look, here's the important thing. The First Amendment is there to protect unpopular speech, not popular speech. The First Amendment is not there to protect the guy who stands on the corner, America's wonderful, we're the best, yay, here's 10 American flags. No, the Constitution there is there to protect the guy who says, I'm a diehard communist, and hold up a sickle and hammer, and then burns an American flag in one hand he's got a burning American flag, and the other hand he's got a hammer and sickle. That's unpopular speech. That is what is protected by the Constitution. And those of us who truly believe in the Constitution say, you got to protect that guy first and foremost, because he's saying things that aren't popular. We do not need a constitution. You never need a constitution to protect the popular speech. And what happens is this: what really differentiates those who believe in the Constitution from those who don't are those who say, I'm standing up for people that I don't agree with. I don't even like what they're saying. I don't agree with what they're saying, but it's constitutionally protected. It was when I used to go on television for the ACLU, and the KKK tried to have a rally, and Annapolis said, you can't have a rally. And the ACLU said, we'll see you. You can think their views are important. We agree. But the ACLU is gone now. Forget the ACLU. It's total crap. But back then, there was some level of backbone. There was still an ACLU, right? It wasn't just another neoliberal operation. Bottom line is, and the ACLU said, look, their views may be abhorrent, but they're protected by the by the Constitution. So we'll sue you if you don't. The city of Annapolis said, okay, well, they can have their march. And we even said, look, the Constitution, nothing stops you from saying they're going to have their march, but at the same time, you can have a counter march somewhere where people have a counter protest and say, we don't like the KKK. And they said, okay, great. So they set it up where the KKK could have their protest and the counter people could have their protest. And then the cops had to be there to make sure everything was safe. There we go. That's the Constitution that Garland Nixon believes in. And I went on television all over Baltimore and I said, look, this ain't about the ACLU either. The Constitution said, I mean, this is not about the KKK. Well, we can't believe that, Garland. Why? You don't like the Constitution? Is that what? Don't argue about who, argue about what. Does the Constitution protect unpopular views or not? We don't need to talk about what the views are. Does it protect unpopular views? If it protects unpopular views and those views are not violating the law, then the Constitution must be adhered to, right? So that's why I say, if a bunch of people say we want to be the Communist Party of the United States and march down the street with communist flags, defend them. They want to put an advertisement on TV. Everybody should be a communist. Come join the Communist Party today. The government has no right to say no. And the Libertarian Party, hey, here's an advertisement. Everybody become a libertarian today. The government has no right to tap their phones and look at them because they don't like the ideology. See, because when you say, I think the government should go after that ideology in violation of the Constitution, you've now said, I don't agree with the Constitution. Forget that. That's what RFK Jr. said. I don't agree with the Constitution. The Constitution should not be applied to people who have ideologies that I disagree with. That's what RFK Jr. said. Hey, should they be able to go after Martin Luther King and tap his phones illegally in violation of the Constitution? Well, if he's doing something that we really don't like, screw the Constitution. And it comes down to whether you believe in, whether your positions are derived from the law, right? Rule of law, what the law says, or who is being involved, right? I agree with that. Oh, well, yeah, I used to get people, and I would do something like this. Let's say a person hated Obama and loved Reagan, which I didn't like none of them, but let's just say they did. I'd say, so here's a person that hates Obama. I'd say, well, when Ronald Reagan said this, 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 and this, and this, that was great, wasn't it? Yeah, that was wonderful. Oh, my bad. Reagan didn't say it. Obama said it. So you agree with that? No, they didn't care what was said, or the opposite. Hey, say to a Obama supporter, hey, don't you think it was great when Obama said blah, 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 and give him a quote from Reagan? And they'd say, yeah, that was brilliant because Obama's such a wonderful guy. And I said, oh, wait a minute. That wasn't Obama. That was Reagan. No, well, it was bad then. Why? They didn't care what was said. There was no commitment to their values. There was no commitment to their principles. They were only committed to who said it. They didn't care what was said. When they found out Obama said it, it's great. When they found out Reagan said it, it's terrible. They didn't care what it was. They only cared who said it. That's what we have a lot in America, a commitment to who said things. Where'd it come from? A guy you don't like. Trump said it. How dare Trump say it? It's terrible. Oh, my bad. Biden said it. Well, there's a lot of truth to that. That's where we are in America. Americans don't stop to think about that. And so what we have now is a government, a fascist ideology that is committed to war, that is committed to censorship, that is committed to taking the money of the working class, oppressing the working class, and putting it in the hands of a few billionaires. And likewise, when you do that with the money, you also do that with the power. So now, instead of the power, see, the money and the prosperity are everywhere. Everybody has some level of power, or at least the illusion that they got some input. But when that power, when that money gets concentrated in the hands of the few, the power also gets concentrated in the hands of the few. And those people then get angry if someone tries to tell them what to do. If somebody get put in there Obama. Well, here's the bottom line with Obama. Let's be honest about what Obama was. The system looked up and said, he's a good looking guy. He's a very bright guy. He presents extremely well. We can stick him out there. People will like him, and we can get the same policies that we've gotten all along. And people will think, since it's coming from a nice guy, that what appears to be a nice guy and a smart guy, people will think, okay, I support that. Then you got a lot of black people who have experienced a lot of terrible things over their history, and they'll say, oh, we finally got a guy who looks like us who's president. I guess he's looking out for us. But he wasn't. But it allowed them to make the people in power to make the argument, a credible argument. He's looking out for you because he looks like you. He's just a regular guy. Look what he's been through. Hey, here's a picture of him when he worked in the hood in Chicago. So it allowed them to make an argument that they had a regular person, that they had a regular guy. The guy went to high-end schools in Honolulu. Private schools. He went to the elite ruling class schools everywhere. He was a member of the elite ruling class. He was trained in all of the mechanics of the elite ruling class, well trained. But he was able to hide it. That's what they love. That's what they want, a good looking guy. Macron, Trudeau. I will say this, that these people aren't as smart as Obama. Obama was a pretty damn smart guy. He was really, really able to hide who he was extremely well until he got to the point where, he just didn't give a damn anymore once he got out of office, and he kind of really exposed himself. But what difference did it make? He had accomplished the mission that he was given, and he is well paid for it. And that's the way the game works. I understand the game, and I'm sure most people do also, right? So where we are now is this. We're in an interesting position because think about this. We got a fascist government that's committed to war, right? But think about this. This is something unique about this time. And I give the people, like right in this chat, a lot of credit for this. The empire has a problem because they've lost the people. So Germany was able to start all these wars and do all this crazy stuff under fascism. Why? And then they said, we're drafting everybody, and people are on board, and people are running around Sieg Heil, and everybody, yay, hooray, this looks great. Let's all go along with it. And of course, they got massacred, right? Ultimately, they massacred others, and they got massacred. All right. Imagine if the U.S. empire would start a war right now. Have you talked to young people in this country? Have you been paying attention to young people in this country? I just saw 400,000 of them last weekend. They were in the streets screaming Genocide Joe. What would happen if this fascist government that we had got that war that they wanted with whoever, right? Okay, so they get a war with whoever. The likelihood is very early in the war, their asses would get knocked silly. They get ships sunk. Their floating coffins would get blown to hell by missiles and torpedoes. They'd lose unthinkable numbers of people, and they would be devastated. And then they would have to say what? Well, we're in a big war with Russia, China, Iran, fill in the blank, all of the above, North Korea. So we're going to have to go on a full war footing. And we're all you young people out there. They try to give us the Zelensky business, right? Sorry, we're going to go into nightclubs and drag all these people out, put them in a uniform, send them to the front to die. How would that work? How would that work? Have you seen the polls lately? Young people are pissed. They are not happy. They are not going along with it. So what would happen? What would happen if they said to all of these young people out here, we're going to war with Russia, China, whoever, Iran, blah, blah, blah. Time for you to get thrown into the army. We're going to give you a uniform. We're going to put you on a ship heading overseas. Oh, bad news. That ship's probably going to get sunk before it gets within 1,000 miles of the coastline of anybody. Now, the kind of missiles they got with thousands of mile range, they'll be fired off of. So you're going to be in a troop carrier heading across the Atlantic, and a missile is going to come whistling out of the ocean at 8,000 miles an hour and tear that ship apart. You're all going to die. You're never even going to get a chance to fight now. Once you get on the troop carrier and get out in the Atlantic, you will not get a chance to fight, because if you go to war with Russia or China or whoever, or even Iran, when you get within striking distance of a missile, your ass is going to get blown out of the water. So all you're going to do is certain death. Sorry, sucks to be you, but we've started a war and now it's your turn to die. The whole generation, you're all dying, right? We're going to give you the business that we just gave Ukraine. We're going to wipe out an entire generation. Let me tell you something. Tens of millions of young Americans would say, you got to be freaking kidding me. So now what are they going to do? Are they going to build enough prisons? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to build prisons for everybody who won't go. Okay, here's 5 million people who said, I ain't going. Here's 800,000. Here's 1 million. Let's go 1 million. Do we have the prisons? Do we have the camps? What are you going to do with 1 million people? And what about their families? What about their families who say, well, you ain't taking my son and daughter. You know, they're going to say, no way. So now you're going to have 1 million people, 2 million people that you've drafted that say, I ain't going to fight for you bastard, you sorry bastards who are robbing me blind. Well, first of all, they all owe their, you hear them, they're all pissed off about their student loans, and now you want them to go die and then come back and pay their student loans until they die a second time. No thanks. They ain't doing it. What are you going to do with all of those people? How are you going to handle that? You don't have the mechanisms. You're going to try. What are you going to do? Now, let me add this. The Trump people, what the hell are they going to do if they get what they want and they're able to stop Trump from running? Right now, it's clear he's going to win. So let's say they charge him with everything, they throw him in jail, and then they say he can't run. You can have literally millions of people, tens of millions of people who say, I'm not paying taxes. I ain't going along with the system. What are you going to do? Is the IRS now going to prosecute 10, 20, 30 million people? How are they going to do that? Right now, the courts, you file a lawsuit and you got a year wait before your trial comes. What the hell is going to happen if now the IRS has to go after and prosecute 10 million people? Are you going to put 10 million people in jail? Where are you going to store them? Where are you going to put them in jail? What about those that say, I ain't going to go? What next? Or 10 million people, 20 million, 30 million. He had 70-some million voters. 20 of them, 20 million say, are you going to go in and the IRS is going to seize the property of 20 people because they won't pay their taxes? Seize their property? What about their families? Are you going to lock them all up? Are you going to take them all up? What if there'll be entire states? Mississippi, they ain't doing it. You're going to go lock up damn near the entire state? In some southern states, you're going to do that? What about people? What about the state that said the government of the state says we're not going to prosecute we're not going to help you, IRS. We're going to you get some of these red states that say we ain't working with the IRS, and some of these sheriffs that say we're not going to allow you to take our people. We're not going to serve papers. We're not going to. You have created a constitutional crisis of the highest degree. If they get what they want, and they're able to stop Trump through lawfare and machinations from running, they now have a greater crisis, because not only have they damn near started a war with everybody around the world, they've also started a war with their own damn people. See, that's the thing about the ruling elite, about these neocons, these fascists, right? They're at war with everybody. They are at war with Russia, China, Iran, and Europe, I might add. They're taking Europe out. It's just that some of the Europeans are waking up to realize that the U.S. empire is at war with them and taking them apart, as are their leaders. But these fascists are at war with their own people. With those of us who will dissent against what they're doing, who don't agree with them, who say perhaps maybe we should actually adhere to the Constitution, perhaps, or talk about if something needs to be changed, at least have the discussion. Perhaps we do need a robust discussion about anything that people want to talk about. That's the way to have a healthy cut. They're at war with us. They're trying to take us out any way they can. And now they're at war with what I call the illusion of democracy. Let's face it. 2016, it should have been Trump versus Bernie. It should have been. Bernie was the guy that the people of the Democratic Party wanted, and they knew it. And the ruling elite said he ain't coming in. I ain't trying to defend Bernie. He's a piece of crap. I hate his guts now. But the bottom line is this. If this was truly a democracy, which it ain't, or something like that. If we exercise democratic principles, the party would they wouldn't have acted in 2016 and 2020 to stop Bernie as a unit, as a political party unit, but they did because they don't believe in democracy, and they understand that prior to 2016, we only had the illusion of democracy anyway, and because they felt threatened, they could not even afford the illusion. Bernie Sanders might do some things that they don't like. And might I add, here's the big issue, and the big issue with Trump and Bernie both. They can't have the people of America thinking and believing that they have a right to choose the candidates and ultimately the president. No, that ain't your job. Your job is to shut up and do what you're told. So if you think that you can pick Trump and they don't want Trump and he can run, no. You think you can pick Bernie, Garland, Jimmy Dore, whoever the hell? The answer is no. They don't even want you thinking that you have that. You can't do it. Sorry, bad news. Shut up. That's where we are. And right now, the Biden administration, and I'll start to wind down. Hell, I've been talking for an hour and a half, but I'll start winding down by saying this. And that is that what we're looking at is a situation where the U.S. empire is falling apart. It's coming unglued. It's going broke, and it is desperate. And the people in charge are losing their grip on everything. And the only thing that they can try to hold on to is the narrative. They don't have the economic power they had. Clearly, they don't have the military power they had. They don't have diplomatic power. Forget it. They're unable to force countries around the world to do what they want them to do. And the only thing they have is a narrative. That's why they're so desperate to hold on to the narrative, because that's all they got left. Think about it. They're so desperate to hold on to the narrative. They don't have the military or economic power. They don't have the political power. The people in the United States are like, we don't like you, and we want anybody but you. Anybody but you we're looking to vote for. And they're saying, okay, we've lost everything. The only thing we have is a narrative. So we can pretend, if we have the narrative, we can pretend to have all of that kind of power. Yeah, sorry. All right, let's take a look. Maybe perhaps we have some people. We always have some people who do. And oh, by the way, thanks to the people now on Rumble, I've heard there's something called Rumble Rants. I don't know what they are. I don't know how it works. Apparently, it's like super chats or something. I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm still working on it. But whatever the case, Trump is a Zionist puppet. Yes, I agree, Greg Deep. They all are. All right, let's keep going. Let's take a peep around. Let's take a look around. Let's see what they found. All right, let's go. Anas says, in this day and age, the battlefield between fascism and dissent is technology. Correct. U.S. empire is now trying to slow innovation of the rest of the world. Good point. How do we have so many brilliant people? That's why I love these super chats. I get really smart people. I'm going to remember that. It's the battleground is technology. Raphael, good old Raphael. As I know, there's going to be a time Russians will be asking for Putin to do something about Zelensky, when the dude is massacring people like this. Yes, but here's the thing. So Zelensky and his crew are still firing into Donetsk and firing into the eastern regions, right? Which is Russia now. Okay. One of the things that's going on, always keep in mind that a desperate person, reaches for anything and tries anything out of desperation. It's clear that the Zelensky people, the Nuland people, are desperate, and they want the Russians to do something stupid. They want them to overreact. So out of desperation, they're losing on the battlefield. So now what they're going to do is try to get the Russians to overreact by attacking. The Russians ain't going to overreact. They're going to maintain course and speed. They're winning the war. What they're doing is working. And what Zelensky and crew are starting to do is they're starting to try to do something that ain't working. They want him to do something that's not working. They want him to do something different. They want him to overreact. They want him to do anything, kill some civilians, whatever. Because right now what the Russians are doing is slowly and methodically disassembling the Ukrainian military. And they want him to do something different. The Russians are not going to do something different. They're going to maintain course and speed. They're going to keep doing what's working in the same way that Israel. They're going into the rubble, getting their butts kicked. They know they can't defeat Hezbollah, they can't defeat Iran or anybody else. So what is Israel doing? They're trying to reach out, do anything crazy thing they can to get Hezbollah or Iran or whoever to overreact so they can drag the United States into this. And the thing about it is, when these countries see that Israel is losing in the court of public opinion and Israel's in deep trouble, they ain't going to bail them out. They're not going to bail them out. And the Russians are not going to bail out Zelensky by doing something stupid or overreacting. They're going to maintain course and speed. How about we look at, thanks a lot, Soberano Brazil. How about we look at Soberano Garland? If Trump gets elected, don't you think that the system will try to kill him? Yes, or try to take away some of his powers to prevent him from making the military industrial. Yeah, they'll freak out. They're already starting. So they're already looking at Trump saying he's a problem and we've got to do some things to stop him. So will they try to kill him? Possibly. They'll be in deep and serious trouble. The U.S. empire and the ruling elite is already in deep and serious crisis. Right now they're in crisis, and Trump is part of that crisis. Now, like I said, he ain't no prize for us whatsoever, but the reality is they see him as an existential threat, the ruling elite. And that's I guess that's a video I'm going to have to do. And the video is why it is that a guy who's a diehard Zionist, that a guy who is, agrees with a lot of the fundamentals of neoliberalism is seen as such a existential threat by the ruling elite. I could make a lot of comments on that, but that's a good conversation that needs to be had. All right, let's go here. Plato's Beard says, great tactic, Garland. I'll adapt it, especially for Obama stands. Love your show, by the way. Thank you. Yeah, it always works. It exposes people who have principles as opposed to people who are just based on who's not. I always say I'm a what person, not a who. I don't care who said it. I don't care if Trump said it. If Biden said something, if Trump said something, if Obama said something, if I agree with it, I agree with it. I don't care what it came from, who it came from. Well, Trump said this. What did he say? He said X. Yeah, I agree with that, or I disagree with that. I don't care where it comes from. But what we're trained in America is you have to agree or disagree based on who it came from. You should be a who person, not a what person. I'm a what person, brothers. A principle, brothers and sisters, a principle person says, I don't care who it came from. I'm going to evaluate the comment and the position and see if it aligns with my principles. Miss Me With It says, two different types of power. One, accumulate all the money and the resources. Two is not to care. One power of coercive influence. Two makes you immune to coercive influence. Interesting. Exactly. If you don't care what somebody else thinks, they can't coerce you. So I agree. All right. If you don't care about the money and all that stuff. All right. So let's go and see. All right. Let's look at Rockfin. Thank you very much, Wanda Lafada Kreitzer. Fred says it's an honor. It's an honor to follow Garland. He's the first person the fascists choose to silence. Yes, he's that much of a threat to the fascists because he makes sense. That's interesting. I've had people say to me, Garland, here's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to look. I've had people say to me, Garland, why is it every time you turn around Facebook, Twitter, whoever the hell why is it it's people are always trying to throw you off, right? Let me take a look. And I say, oh, there's people over there. Oh, I'm looking at my Rumble stream, my little Rumble stream, right? Wow, that's it. 97 people watching. Oh, I'm impressed. Well, and people say, well, Garland, you're a gentlemanly kind of guy. You tend to have more of a comedic, intellectual, philosophical discussion. You're not the guy that's out there throwing the punches. Why is it that the system, you're always getting thrown off Facebook and Twitter and all these kind of places, right? And I say this specifically for that reason, because they're happy with a person that just is angry throwing punches. They're happy with a person who's taking these extreme positions saying these are the good guys and those are the bad guys, because that's what they work off of. They work off of good guys and bad guys, right? Where Garland simply says, I think we should have a robust intellectual discussion. And I have my ideological beliefs, but I'm not saying they're right or wrong. And you have a right to yours. And we have a right to, I truly believe that everybody has a right to vote and and be considered. And we should argue that if somebody is a libertarian, they disagree with me, a conservative, a liberal, you name it, I'm a lefty. No shame in my game, but I respect people who disagree with me. And I like a robust conversation. Well, God, I think you're wrong for this. Great. Let me hear it. That's what I'll say. Let me hear why. And everybody should hear why you disagree with me. That's healthy, isn't it? That's the most dangerous person. It's easy. The best thing is the person that says, I hate all the fill in the blank, the liberals or the socialists. Oh, I hate the libertarians. Oh, I hate the conservatives. That's what they want. Why? Because then the working class people are beating the hell out of each other. Well, what about those conservatives? Let's fight them. No, let's fight the liberals. No, let's fight the socialists. No, let's fight them, right? They're happy with that because the working class people are beating the hell out of each other. When the working class people all get together and say, I think we should have a wise conversation. And then they have like Rage Against the War Machine. And all these people who disagree ideologically come together and say, I think we're being screwed by these rich bastards. These powerful warmongers, don't like them. Let's all come together. That's the most dangerous thing. The most dangerous thing for the ruling elite is when a socialist and a libertarian and a conservative and a UFI and all of those all sit down and say, there's one thing we got in common. We're being screwed by these bastards. Let's all come together and realize that we're just regular old working class people, and that before we can even have our discussion about what we want to do, we got to stop them from screwing us. We don't want that. We all agree. What is it? We all agree we don't like this war. We all agree that they're destroying the Constitution, taking out Julian Assange. We don't like what the CIA is overthrowing governments. We don't like this, and that. And we all come together and we say, we don't like that the FBI is always going after whoever. Perfect example. Well, those who said, I'm fine with the FBI going after communists and socialists. Are you okay with them going after Trump now? See, the fact that they could go after the communists and socialists meant that they could ignore the Constitution, which protects unpopular speech and political views. The communists and socialists are protected. But if you say it's okay for the FBI to go after them in violation of the Constitution, guess what? At some point, your turn. And now it's your turn. You're conservative. So now they're like, we're going after Trump. And now people are like, wait a minute, that violates the Constitution. You didn't say that when they were going after the communists and socialists, but I did, because I knew what was coming, because I knew if you let them violate the Constitution over here, that you have no Constitution and they're going after it everywhere. That's the difference. Someone says you can't be anti-Zionist. There you go with another one. Hey, I'm opposed to Zionism. Oh, you are, huh? Well, you might have to go to jail, you Hamas-supporting terrorist lover, you. Again, if you let him get its nose under the constitutional tent, before you know it, his whole body will be in there. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Somebody says Trump is a Zenist, A-Z-I-N-I-S dog. What does a Zenist mean? I don't know. Whatever. We know. I know what Trump is, so we don't have to argue. All right. Somebody says here, it's finally obvious what they're afraid of. Ironically, is we the people who knew exactly. Anything else? Tabernacle. What nation in the global south say or do mean little? The trend of the future will be their pursuit for self-interest at the expense of the empire. Hooray, my brother. You're preaching summer of 1970. Thanks. Thoughts on the Second Amendment. Let me say this. Did you know that one of the foundations of Yemen, of the Houthi version of Shia Islam, is that every man should have a gun to protect his family? So bottom line is this. I got mixed emotions. Look, it's there. The Second Amendment is there. People can have guns. And I would say this. If the government is going to say you have to disarm, as they do nothing but build more and more armaments and ship them all over the world, but the people have to disarm, people are not going to go for that. And they shouldn't. So the government says, what do they say? We got to ship more arms to Ukraine. Okay. What about Taiwan? Don't you think it should be peaceful? No, we got to ship more arms to them. They got to have more missiles and guns. Oh, okay. What about Iran? What about Israel? More guns, more missiles, more arms. Everybody, they need them. Iran, we got to sit by the billions. Well, okay. What about the people of America? Should they have arms? Absolutely not. Everybody in the world should be armed except the people of America. I can understand how the people of America would say, I might have a slight problem with that. That's all I'm saying. I can understand that. Chickaboom, great show as always. Garland, thanks. That's interesting. Deke salad. All right, let me make sure I didn't miss anybody. Oh, here's another one. Chicka Boom Boom says, Garland, if the draft takes place, would you move to Mexico? No, you kidding me? Look, they'd have to try to do me. I'd be one of those people here saying, nah, I ain't going. I ain't going. So what are you going to do? You going to come get me? Come, and all these other millions of people, come get us all. Let's see how that works. How the system gets clogged up when you're now coming after millions of people who won't go fight your stinking wars of genocide. No thanks. Nah, I ain't going nowhere. They had to come get me. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. I think that's it for everybody on Rockfin. This is the first time I've looked at Rumble. Wow, there's people there. 102 people on Rumble. I'm here and there. All right. Well, thanks a lot, all the Rumble people. What is a Rumble rant? That's what I want somebody to tell me. What is that? And then is it possible to do a Rumble rant? Let me look and see. What is this over here? What is this? Live chat. Enable slow chat. What's it say? I think I did something I shouldn't do. I think I just killed the live chat. Rumble rants. I'll have to figure it out. Oh, let me see. Oh, there it is. You can do Rumble rants. Remember to enter your rant above. This rant will stick for 2 minutes. Please select payment. Come. Wow. Okay. I'm figuring it all out. Rumble. I think, to be frank, that the time will come when I truly believe this, when I'll have to move to Rumble. I really do, because people like me who are saying things that are unacceptable to the mainstream people. I think the time's going to come when the only place for us will be places like Rumble and Rockfin and stuff like that. So I am preparing myself for that by building my Rumble audience. So everybody who is a member here, please, you see all of the things going across the bottom there. Oh, I got to add my Rumble, I guess, now to that. And take the Twitter one off, huh? Yikes. Everyone, please make sure you go to rockfin.com, ROKFIN.com, and go to rockfin.com, become a member. Doesn't cost anything. Or you can, if you want to, at Rockfin, you can become a subscriber. It's like $14.99 a month. If you can, I appreciate it. If you can't, no problem. Go to Rumble, make sure you become a member there. And again, if you can help the channel, got Buy Me a Coffee, PayPal, Cash App, all of that stuff is going across the bottom. It's certainly appreciated. Follow me on Telegram. I love Telegram. Telegram is great, man. I'm starting to really get into it. It's awesome. Thanks a lot, everybody. My God, I've been on for an hour and 41 minutes. I think I've spoken far too much today. Peace. I'm out. Chicken Patty. Have a wonderful day.